So I was blessed to get this little setup right here at the Richmond Cane Pole. And they've always got some type of rod there. They got a lot of brand new ones. But they actually get, from time to time, people come in and trade older rods in order to get newer rods. So every now and then you wind up across these deals right here. So a lot of times you have to check frequently, but there's always something good in there, usually on the racks. And that's the reason why I was blessed to have this set up right here. And I really enjoyed using it, and hopefully I'll be able to catch a lot more fish on it over the years. So let's talk a little bit about it. All right, God bless y'all. Well, didn't get to go fishing this morning like I was going to. Went to bed on time. Had plans to get up this morning and go to the lake, but slept in and didn't even hear my alarm or anything. So obviously my mind was pretty tired. My body was pretty tired. So I'm going to use a few minutes to make a little short review on this G. Loomis crankbait series rod. It's an older rod. Just based on my experiences of crankbait rods, and just based on my experiences here lately of the several fish that I've caught on it already. I've actually had it out a few times. And any of you all have watched some of the videos, I even have a playlist set up to where it's actually set up on my channel specifically for the crankbait series rod. I probably should actually name it Red Crankbait Series rod, because that's what it reminds me, because the rod's red and every time I catch fish on it. So why is it that everybody looks for these and loves them so much? Well, these rods were actually part of the line back when Mr. G. Loomis was actually, Gary G. Loomis was actually still in charge of making the rods. So they were made a little bit different. A lot of the rods now are kind of a combination of a little bit of Shimano and like the Conquest series, they're a mixture between Shimano and G. Loomis. And even the IMX Pros are kind of a blend because they're more of a taper design. These rods, it's different because let's go over first why it's so important to have a crankbait style rod. Can you use any rod? Yes, but you heard me say this several times over several different fish, and I'll include throughout this little video a couple little times that I've caught fish on this bait, so you can kind of see how the bait loads and everything that it does. I'll include that a little bit later. The two baits that I have thrown the most on it, which this should cover the majority of the crankbait styles, okay? I love Black Label crankbaits. They're a balsa crankbait. If you have not fished a Black Label crankbait, you need to try to, because the action that they have is amazing. If you like Rapala base crankbaits, you will love Black Label crankbaits even more. I'm just going to tell you, the balsa action that Rapala has is good, but Black Label is just another level. This one here is called the Wreck. It's a little fatter crankbait. It also has a wider lip. So this is more of a square bill type bait. It's going to be 4 or 5 foot deep. So the rod that I have is the 845, 7 foot medium heavy, moderate fast action. It says that it does from 3/8 ounce to 1 ounce. Those are the size of the baits that it suggests in order for you to cast with it. For this style of bait right here, I need a crankbait rod that is going to cast a bait, number one. But number two, it has to be able to allow the bait to bump off of cover and allow a bass. A lot of people don't realize this, but a bass doesn't just come up and overpower the bait. What a bass does is the bass actually opens his big mouth and inhales the bait. So does, now a smallmouth, what they do is they actually hit it a mile a minute like a torpedo, the way they attack a bait. A spotted bass is kind of a mixture of the two. They inhale it and they go attack it and they nail it. So that's why you have the strikes the way you do. That's why a largemouth seems to just all of a sudden just be there. It's because of those different effects. So when you have a crankbait going down the water and it reflects off something and it reacts them to grab it, then what tends to happen is they inhale this bait. So you need something that's going to allow the bait to go backwards just a little bit, even though you're keeping it under a constant retrieve, and allow them to get it inside their mouth before they close and they turn. That's when that bend in that rod, you've seen me show this a couple times. That's why that rod, you can see it by itself, it has that little springy action. That's why that rod needs to have a bend to it, but it also needs to have a curve throughout the rod so that part of the whole rod becomes part of the action instead of just the first 15 inches like most fast action rods have. That's what a moderate taper tends to be. These have an amazingly, I've used fiberglass rods. The only problem with fiberglass rods, I even picked up one here lately that was a fiberglass rod. And the only thing that I was excited about was because of the action. What I had forgotten about is the weight. Fiberglass rods are awesome. The problem is the weight they have. You cast them all day long. Now, if you're 20, 25 years old, 30 years old, you lift weights all the time, to you, it probably ain't gonna bother you. You get to my age and you're 50 and you cast a little while and you're already wore out. Jerkbait wears you out in 30 minutes. That's why this style of rod, even back in the day when it was made, the graphite rod, that having that action helps tremendously. Can you achieve the same thing with a medium action rod, just a regular graphite? You can to a certain extent, but most of them still have too stiff because it's only in the first section of the rod. Versus this one, the bow in the rod's a little bit deeper down. What type of, this 845 is perfect for this square bill. Now I'm pushing the limits with this rod that's a medium heavy just a little bit, but I also like to throw this square bill. The wreck is about 1/2 ounce, so it's easy to throw on this rod. This one here is a 5/16. This is a little Black Label Hickster, more of a flat-sided bait. This would be more your style like a DT6 in a Rapala brand, but this doesn't have any rattles to it, so this is perfectly silent. And it only goes a few feet. Even though I have a MR version of this Hickster, which goes down to that 7 or 8, depending on what size line you put. But you think, man, 5/16, that's hard to cast. Well, that's one thing about this rod. Because it has that bend, it does allow me to cast very easily this little bait here also. Now, I'm not going to keep it a secret from you. I'm going to tell you this also. If you get into balsa type crankbaits or want to throw what I call finesse style crankbaits, which are that 5/16 range, okay? An advice that I will give you is you need an MGL. If you're using Shimano, this is a Corrado Shimano 150 size. It's in a 6.2, which the gear ratio is up to you. I use a 6.2 for just about everything crankbait wise. This one here has an MGL spool, okay? That MGL spool that you see right there allows this spool to free float and cast super light baits. I actually have to, normally what you would do is you would put all those little, you'd have 2 brakes on, 1 brake off, make it even. So basically you're having 2 brakes on the side, which is this little piece right here. You open it up and you have these 6 little things in there. Usually you would put, in order to cast lighter baits for that specific reel, then what you would do is you would have 4 brakes on, 2 brakes off. And you do it opposite of each other so that it allows to spin and allows it to be balanced. On this reel, it is so sensitive and the spool is so light, you actually just about on windy days have to have all the brakes on. And yet it still casts this little 5/16. When you add the flexibility of that tip in the front to where it allows, when I go to cast, it allows that rod to bend and then cast it. Don't get me wrong, it's not a whip, but it does have a whippy action if that makes any sense. It takes a little bit of strength to bend it, takes a little bit of weight to cast it, but it doesn't cause a lot of effort to cast this little bait. This also is one of the benefits of having the correct rod for the correct technique that you're doing. It makes a big difference. If you love to throw crankbaits as much as I do, and especially you like these balsa ones, you need to think about getting an actual dedicated crankbait rod. It's probably, if you're going to invest in a specific style of fishing or technique, it's probably one of the ones that needs one for sure. It needs its own rod. Just makes it a whole lot easier, gives it a lot less headache. Now I will say, Cliff Base makes these black labels to where they are weighted and they are extremely easy to cast. But if you get into balsa type baits and you get into other brands, if you don't want to use a spinning outfit on windy days for certain ones of them, then you better start investing in either a medium action or a medium heavy action, some type of crankbait rod. Now the way this is graphite makes this rod more sensitive while I'm cranking. That becomes important, especially with this rod, because I can actually feel when it hits a log. I can feel when I get a bite. I can feel that little tick when a bass inhales this and bumps it, grabs it, pulls it, anything different. If I have a leaf on it, I can feel it on this rod. Okay? That becomes really important. It also becomes important to have that graphite because it's easier on the shoulders. It doesn't weigh as much. Therefore, you're able to cast it longer. If you ever have those days that, hey, they're biting a crankbait, it's fun to just chuck and wind, bring it in, bam, I caught one, I caught another one. As you go throughout the day, you'll get tired if you use a fiberglass rod or something that way. So having a graphite crankbait rod becomes awesome. Usually what happens is when you have a graphite rod, you lose some of that bend, you lose some of that absorbing of the bass bite. It's a little bit harder to keep these little hooks stuck on them because there has to be a balance. This rod, I'm pretty impressed because this reminds me a lot of my St. Croix fiberglass rod that I had. It allows not only for the hook to be set on a fish, to when they grab it, you actually get the hook to penetrate, but it actually has enough give to it to where the bass doesn't pull off. That becomes another thing. These right here in this wreck, this uses a little number 6 hooks, little number 6 mustad treble hooks. This does also in the little Hickster. Your Rapala DT6s, I believe they have a number 5 little hook. It'll keep them pinned as well. If I was going to throw just these baits right here, just the Hickster all the time, then I would say that if you looked for probably an 843 action or an 844 of these older rods, it would probably be a little bit better just for that specific technique. My experience, though, is that the more medium you go on a rod, the more chances there is that you're not going to get a good hook set unless the fish hits it hard. If it's a little small fish, they don't have a whole lot of weight. So therefore, when you throw it out and you go to just not pull and yank the hook like you would a jig, but just turn sideways in order to apply pressure, then you don't penetrate the hooks as much because there's not a lot of weight in behind the fish. So therefore, they come up and they spit it, and that's it. A lot of the times, that's what happens. A bigger fish tends to come in better most of the time because they're pulling against you and you're pulling against them, so therefore the hook that drives it in. That is just something about the actions that you'll have to tell yourself. This one here is an 845. It's a medium heavy. So to me, it's the perfect action. There has been a few times that I've been throwing it that I'm like, man, they just swiped at it or smacked at it, and that's, I believe, what it was. So it's not necessarily that it's not driving the hooks. I'm not pulling the hooks out of them. I actually did have one day that I used this as a topwater rod, just because it does have that action and we're dealing with treble hooks again. It did really well that day. It was a little bit heavy, but that has a lot to do with me and I'm older, not really the rod. The rod wasn't the issue. The issue was really me and just my old shoulders. But I did use it for that a little while. It seemed to have perfect action that I could sit there and pop that popper and I was fine. If I wouldn't use it all day long, maybe to walk a bait, but if I was just going to do it for a short time, then I will. I usually use 15-pound Red Label Seagull on all my crankbaits just because I tend to throw them right into the wood, right wherever I want to put them. I do lose a little bit of depth out of them, but most of the time I'm not trying to achieve a depth. If I want to achieve a depth, then I tend to go to a little bit heavier one. In the winter time, I haven't used this specific rod in the winter, but Lord willing, I will. In the winter time, I tend to change out my line, and I tend to use either some type of copolymer or a monofilament when I do that, usually in 12-pound tests, because the diameter stays the same as this 15-pound Seagar. 15-pound Seagar has pretty much the same diameter of 12-pound big game monofilament, in case you wondered. So that's the reason why I switched that, because I still get the same depth out of my baits. The difference is that Seagar in the wintertime, after it gets down to those freezing conditions, it tends to be a little bit harder to work with. It coils up a little more. It's harder to cast. The monofilament is softer, but in the wintertime, because everything gets a little denser, it becomes a little stiffer, and it still has a little bit of stretch, but not as much in the wintertime as it would in the summer. So on this combination, that's probably what I'll do later on, but I'm pretty impressed with this rod. It has allowed me already to catch quite a few fish. I've heard about it for years, and I was blessed to finally get one. The price range as of right now, we're in 2025. You're probably gonna spend $200 at least if you find one of these. I have seen some on eBay that are up to $300-400 because they don't make them anymore. They are pretty rare. So if you run across one you like crankbaits, you might want to take a try at one and just see, because I've been pretty blessed to have one. Like I said, if you want any other questions, you're more than welcome to message me. I'll attach a couple little clips here of a couple of the bass that I've caught on 2 different baits. So God bless you all. Hope this helps you a little bit in your decision if you're going to try to get one. Any other questions you have, message me. Don't forget, Jesus loves you. Y'all have a wonderful day. There you go. Look at that. Look at that. Got me another one. Got me another one. What's a good one there? Let's see. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Pretty little one right there. Thank you, Lord. That little boy right there will flat out get him out of that timber. I'll just tell you, that little wreck will flat out catch him out of that timber. Thank you, Lord Jesus. That little Black Label Hickster. All right. So, First of all, we're going to talk about the setup that I'm using right now. Throw this little crankbait on. About a month or so ago, I put up a 3 rod setup that I have. Pretty much power fishing. You got those G Loomis NRX Plus 854s. Okay. Perfect for probably 80% of what you're going to do. The one setup that I've been waiting to get again, to have a decent version of, and I could not pass up the deal that I pretty much got on this setup here. I've thrown crankbaits for years, and most of the year you can pretty much throw a jig, spinnerbait, different things. This is one time a year that everybody talks about, and pretty much anybody in bass fishing knows that the fall is probably the hardest time of the year to get a bite. And I'm going to tell you why. I've learned that it has a lot to do with these little bitty minnows about this big, and they're going to the back of the creeks, they're going to the middle of the creeks, and these bass pretty much get to the point where they key on nothing but that. You can still catch them on jigs, and you can catch them on different things if you catch them in timber or you catch them, but for the most part you're dealing with topwater bite. All of a sudden they'll blow up, or you happen to run into a pocket and you see them breaking up, and that's kind of what you see them schooling. So you about have to throw some type of little crankbait. Now you can throw, when I say little, DT6 or smaller. I've got bigger ones that I throw sometimes, but the majority of the fall you're going to deal with smaller bait fish is what you're competing with. So the closer you can get to that, the better off you're going to be. My favorite, one of my absolute favorites, Cliff Pace makes them. These right here, these little Black Label. This one's a Hickster. Now this one's Plemons, I think, I remember what the color is that this is. It's really bright. It's kind of a white color. I've got several different ones. This one here is kind of just a regular version. It goes about 4 to 5 feet. I'm going to tell you the setup that I have this on. This little crankbait here is a little balsa crankbait, 5/16. I throw it on 15 pound. I know a lot of people throw their crankbaits on 10 and 12, and that's fine. But I throw this on 15 pound Seaguar, Red Label. And this setup right here, I got at the Richmond cane pole. This is a setup that I could not pass up. Because if I'm only going to have one crankbait setup, and that's one of the reasons why I let that one NRX rod go, is that yes, it was pretty good for a lot of techniques, but honestly, for crankbait, I used it for that, but it really wasn't the best. So I kind of let it go for a while, and this is what I got. This is a very rare, this is a G Loomis. This is an actual crankbait series rod that they made way back in the day. This is an 845 7-foot medium heavy. Now don't let the medium heavy fool you, because it does have a very good parabolic bend to it. This is made specifically for crankbaits, okay? So it's got a soft tip and it bends fairly easy. Perfect for square bills, in my opinion. Perfect for these little balsa baits that I'm going to throw. I've got that with a Corrado MGL. Now this is the 150, and it's a 6.2 gear ratio. Now technically you could use it on a little bit faster reel, but like I said, this is a little combo setup that I bought. I couldn't pass up. I'm thankful to the boys down there at the Richmond cane pole. They've got all kinds of little deals every now and then, and somebody had brought this in. This normally doesn't come like this. This is just a covering. You can go in there and talk to them. They could probably set you up on getting this covering. This kind of protects the handles from those cork handles. But that's the setup. That's what I'm using. So now basically I have 4 rods set up. I have my normal jig, spinnerbait, swim jig setups on those others, and that's what I use probably 80% of the time. Y'all have seen that. But in the fall especially, and sometimes dead of winter, Real hard to beat these little balsa crankbaits, just because they're mimicking exactly what these bass are after right now. So we've caught a few this morning. We'll see what else the Lord blesses with. Let's get back to fishing.